I knew that it should be a revenge story, partially because that's just most of these Viking stories are revenge stories, but a good revenge movie works. And I felt that if I could find a really simple, mythic, clear tale that this audience could relate to and understand, then I could indulge in the material world and the inner and religious and mythological world more than if the story was complex. And so, really quickly, I discovered the story of Amleth that was written by the Danish historian Saxo Grammaticus. And Amleth was the source material for Shakespeare's Hamlet, also known as The Lion King. And so when I had this story, uncle kills dad, steals mom, son goes on revenge. Everybody knows this. This just works. So that was really exciting. My biggest misconception about Vikings was just that they were, big, stupid, raping, pillaging, and look, the Vikings did a lot of terrible stuff. Like and I don't shy away from that in the film. But what got me fascinated was the rich mythology and poetry. As I learned more, even their wood carvings and visual artistic expression was also very inspiring. But I think when you're dealing with these pagans, they're the pagan in the period in our film, who every part of life is an expression of belief, and belief is an expression of every part of life. There is so much beauty in the way that they saw the world. I try to present this mindset, the Viking mind, whatever that is, without judgment. This is their beliefs. It's not my beliefs. It's not your beliefs. This is their beliefs. But even then, in not trying to romanticize their beliefs, I think with the revenge motif, as an audience member, part of you just wants him to get revenge because that's the way these kinds of stories work. But you do ask questions, hopefully, if I've done my job, who's right and who's wrong. And that's one of the cool things about the sagas is they also, as far as the protagonists and the antagonists, there is often gray area there. They are full characters. And so I hope that, even in telling this story about a culture who says you must revenge and you're going to be shamed and criticized and everyone's going to hate you and you're a failure if you don't revenge, that we can still wonder if that's the right thing to do. I was incredibly fortunate that Sjón, the Icelandic novelist and poet, wanted to work with me. I mean, I don't use this word lightly. He's a genius, not to say that this thing we created together is genius, but he is one. And his understanding of this mythology and culture is just very rich to begin with, even though we did a lot of research. But it was one of the most fun collaborations I've ever had in my life. He has a wonderful sense of humor, and he's also just so incredibly fast. If I have one small idea, he'll then send like 10 ideas based on that immediately. But basically, I wrote a treatment. I went to Iceland. We enriched that together. He wrote a longer treatment, which I gave him notes on. He wrote a longer one. I gave him notes on that. Then he wrote a draft. I gave him notes. And then he wrote another draft, and then I revised that. And then we revised together. Early on, with the first treatment that I sent Alex, it began in Denmark, and then as a Viking raider, as a berserker Ulfhethnar, he went to Scotland. And Alex said, oh, we've seen like raiding on the British Isles a lot. Like, why don't they go to the land of Rus or modern day Ukraine? And you didn't have to force me. I love Ukrainian folk culture, so I was incredibly happy that he suggested that, and it changed. Olga became Olga. The Cirrus became what she, all this stuff. So it was very, that was a great addition early on. Amleth is an interesting character in Saxo Grammaticus because he's someone who is playing a fool, which is what Shakespeare really takes advantage of, is someone who's pretending to be mad, which is not what we're doing here. He plays sort of a dullard when he's disguised as an enslaved person on the farm. But I think what we wanted to make Amleth feel like a protagonist in these Icelandic family sagas, who are these kind of anti-heroes. They're often outlaws. We were looking at Native American dances where people kind of transform into bears and wolves, and also war dances from like Polynesia and Africa, and then tried to understand how, there's a few images that we think are Germanic war dances that exist from actually mostly a little before the Viking Age. And so we tried to, how can that influence this static image of a guy holding two spears? And so we worked with our team of core berserkers on this. But and I think it was really one of the most satisfying things and helpful things for Alex was that Berserker transformation. Alex has said that he was glad that we didn't do it right away because he had a few weeks to get to know me and Jared and how we worked better. But after we did that scene where he really just completely lets go and does something I haven't seen him do on screen before, he was just Amleth the rest of the shoot. Like every take is a usable take. He was just, in it. And I think, how can that not be cathartic for you as a person to perform that? I purposefully cast Arthur Novak as young Amleth, who really does look quite a bit like Alex when he was 11 or 12, but also he's a sensitive child, and he seems gentle. So in the initiation ceremony, when he has to now like become a man, it hopefully seems quite intense because he seems not ready to be a man. And then he's thrust into this situation. And then to see through his uncle's acts how he has become this beast that is Alex with shoulders up to here, that initiation ritual is a step in that direction. It was lucky for me that the handsomest, famousest, biggest, Nordic actor wanted to do a Viking movie. There's nobody else who could play this role except for Alex, with the kind of complete dedication and believability that Alex brings it. It's just there's nobody else. And I mean, I gotta tell you, in the last act, he feels like someone. He feels like a saga character, just like a true Viking hero, anti-hero, like off the page, and it's incredibly satisfying for me to watch. I don't do anything that I am not insanely passionate about because there's just not time in life for it, and it's so hard to make a film anyway. And the approach of trying to do something historically accurate, the great thing for me about it is that everybody knows what we're after. Everybody knows what we're after. We know that we're after this thing. So it aligns everybody. And we also, because we had the Viking historians working with us, like Neil Price and Johanna Katrin Friedrichsdotter, and we also had a lot of people who were working on the film, creating wardrobe and creating props and things, who were part of the living history and experimental archaeology community, who, like, you know, become Vikings on the weekend. So you have a lot of people who have like passion invested in figuring this stuff out. And so that makes the other people around them more passionate, you know? And then all of a sudden, you know, you have like core background playing enslaved people coming up to me with something that they read, you know? And so everyone gets passionate about like the goal. CC Smith was the stunt coordinator, and it shouldn't have been a surprise to me, but it, you know, I realized quite early on in prep, like, he's another authorial voice in this movie. I mean, like, when you're doing an action movie, like, that person is a major collaborator in telling this story. And CC was, you know, he's very experienced. Also, his expertise kind of comes in sword fighting. That's what he loves. And I shared with him a bunch of YouTube videos of this, of people who, like, hypothetically think they know how Vikings fought based on, you know, why is the crossguard so small on their sword? People must have realized a bigger crossguard would give more hand protection. But then this guy's kind of arguing because the size of the shield, there's a reason, whatever. But we looked at that kind of stuff to think about how can we create some fighting styles that are new. So Jaron, my DP, and I, we would go and watch CC rehearse these scenes with his guys. And then Jaron would be with an iPhone trying to figure out the camera placement. And so we were having to work together in working in this fashion where there's all these long takes. Like, how can we work? You know, again, the whole thing becomes a machine. It becomes a big dance when you're working in this way. So we were constantly, constantly improving to make it more holistic. Tommy Dunn made our weapons, and so Craig, the production designer, Linda Muir, the costume designer, they know how I work, and everyone else didn't. And this idea that don't look at pictures of Viking swords and then design a cool one with a dragon on it. Just make me that sword, or make me like that sword hilt with that blade, maybe that pommel, but that's it. It's like, just do the research. And it was actually hard for people to wrap their minds around at first. Everyone got there and everyone enjoyed it. But Tommy was the first new person who was like, you want me to make museum replicas? Got it. And he made, I mean, really incredibly beautiful things. How do we create something simple that's based on the research entirely, that also feels like something that came out of a post-tribal civilization and just feels grounded? And how do you make basically wool tunics, and that's just about it, like, cool, without trying to make them cool? I mean, part of it is the actor's attitude. And luckily, Alex Skarsgård and Anya Taylor-Joy, they can make a potato sack look great, But it was challenging. And the other thing that was also challenging, and this was true with all of the material culture, is that to a modern eye, if you traveled from Iceland to Russia, people dress more alike than you'd expect. People dress more alike than you'd expect because also, the people are trading and raiding, and so all this stuff's getting passed. There are certainly very different things, but we had to focus on the differences in order so that when we would go to the land of the Rus and we're with this Slavic village, you understand, like, this is a community that dressed very differently from where Amleth grew up. King Orvindil Warraven is played by Ethan Hawke, and he is a handsome, proud Norse king of a petty kingdom north of Scotland called Hrafnsey, or Hrapsi, as Icelanders would pronounce it, which is insane. And it means Raven's Island. None of that's in the movie to that specificity, but so you know. And then Gudrun, Queen Gudrun is played by Nicole Kidman, and she has some secrets that shall not be told on this EPK. Nicole was great, and I'm not I've been doing I'm not look, this is only my third film, but I've been doing it long enough that I don't tend to like get intimidated by actors, and certainly on set we had a great relationship. But with the first time I was going to meet her, I was a little bit like, I'm gonna meet Nicole Kidman. And so we sat down at this Italian restaurant in Nashville, and we were kind of talking like, how was your flight? Blah, blah, blah. And then after 90 seconds, she was like, just so you know, I'm going to do the movie. and then we talked a little bit, and she said, this script has teeth. I don't read scripts that have teeth, which was cool. But she also gave me a lot of notes about her character that were incredibly good to make the character much more rich and nuanced. Clearly, is an accomplished Viking swordsman. He has a little bit of a Viking Richard III about him, which Claes does really well. And I think that, him always feeling like, am I as good or better than my brother? I should be better, but am I actually better? But I'm going to kill him. But like, I killed him. And I think even though he is like scary and formidable, that tension and that subtlety makes Fjolnir very interesting. And also, this is something that Alex and Shion and I wanted from the beginning, was also that Fjolnir is more nuanced. I love Willem, Willem's one of the greatest actors who's ever lived, in my humble opinion, but I think that, it should, I would submit that as a fact. And I'm lucky that he likes to work with me. And I think it was great because we'd already worked together on The Lighthouse, he knew what Jaron and I were up to. Anya Taylor-Joy plays Olga of the Birch Forest, who is a Slavic woman and a white witch who is enslaved by the Viking mercenaries that Amleth, for a time, is employed by. And he sneaks aboard the slave ship that's bringing Olga and some other enslaved Slavic people to Iceland. And I think, he's intrigued by her powers, and she must wonder, what in the hell is this Viking doing on here, on this slave boat? Like, there's something going on. And I think that then they realize that they can help each other get off this island. And that's which is what she wants, but Alex has some things he needs to get done first, of course. Anya, aside from being, a perfectionist in her work and an incredible actress, who's able to express really deep subtext with a simple line. She's also super professional, and she a lot of times was almost a background character in some of these scenes, like where and a lot of actresses might have asked to use a double, but she was there with her shoes off in the mud in the freezing cold, and being again a leader for everyone to respect and say like this is how you conduct yourself on a set. I asked my friend Robin Carolyn, who is the composer along with Seb Gainsborough. Robin had collaborated with Björk a lot, and so he'd been to Iceland a lot, and he's also half Icelandic. So I asked Robin, what should we do while we're here? And he gave us touristy things to do and some not so touristy things to do. And he said, you should hang out with Björk. And I was kind of, I said, please, it's fine. Like, no, that's okay. You don't need to anyway. And then Björk texts me suddenly saying, please come over to my house for dinner. I'm making salmon and I'm inviting my friend Shion and his wife Ausa. I think you guys would really get along with them. And I said, to myself, I don't even know you. Like, why do you think I'm going to get along with your friend Shion? So Björk hosted this lovely dinner, and her daughter Doa was also there, who is also in the film. But she was like 12 or 13 at the time, something like that. And then, yeah, Shion and I started talking about early modern witchcraft. We hit it off. So Björk, in many ways, and Robin, like, engendered this movie. Björk did have input on her costume. It was, mostly my design and Linda's design. And it is, I will admit, like one of the more speculative costumes. Her sort of dress and the profusion of jewelry is likely quite accurate. The headpiece is a more ancient version of something that is based on Ukrainian bridal headpieces that are more from like the end of the early modern period into like the 19th to 20th century. But we tried to create a more ancient version of that. And it's, as if, as a seeress, she's wedded to the gods. And then the temporal rings on her headdress are again accurate. But then Björk wanted a third eye, and she also wanted her eyes to be concealed. And so there are, if you'll notice that the women wear cowrie shell headbands in this particular village, which is based on the kind of headgear from this Ukrainian tribe who are called Severians. They didn't call themselves that. We don't know what they called themselves, but that's how we refer to them. But I think, like, given where some cowrie shells are in certain burial sites, we felt we could justify lowering them to be here, and that was something from Björk, and I think the third eye is really cool. Robin and Seb sort of worked with a Danish guy named Paul Huxbro, who's a musicologist who specializes in what actual Viking Age music might have sounded like, which we hear in the diegetic cues in the movie. And they tend to be a little bit more like Hey Nani Nani and like medieval than we think of like Viking stuff. But through their exploration of the real stuff, and like Nordic melodies and exploring what the capabilities of the ancient instruments, and then being inspired by like the better stuff of this neofolk, they've created a really cool, like muscular soundtrack that I am really proud of. Ingvar is the Laurence Olivier of Iceland, and he's like fairly unknown here. But I mean, he plays the third seer, and he has to go toe to toe charisma with Defoe and Björk, and he totally succeeds. I mean, like that. I love him in that scene, and also he tends to play sort of depressed Icelandic policeman in Nordic noirs. So this is like the complete opposite of the kind of roles that he usually plays. And additionally, he like they're because of someone who traveled to Hebidi in the Viking Age and talked about Viking singing coming from their throats and sounding like the growling of dogs. There's the hypothesis that throat singing was part of like Viking singing culture. And Ingvar taught himself to throat sing for the role, which is also really cool. The thing that made me want to make a Viking movie was the Icelandic landscapes, the awe of these landscapes that feel before time and without time, because they're just so epic. And you felt like, when I felt like, silly as it is, like when I didn't even know anything about them, like the Norse gods have got to be here, man. Like they've got to be here. And so when you are telling a mythic tale like this, like you know, you want to have these mythic landscapes to set it in. The Northman is a story that everyone can relate to and be familiar with. It is like, you know, the story of a son seeking his father's vengeance. It's a story about family dynamics. It's a story about love, you know, and it's an exciting adventure movie. I think that you know, we think we know Viking stories, and we think we know these kinds of epics like this, and you know, to a certain degree, we do. I'm making a movie for a broad audience in a way that I never have before. It really is intended to be something that like everyone can enjoy and like and eat their popcorn to. You know, there are set piece action sequences, which is something that I've never done before, but also because it's character driven, like hopefully you walk away thinking about the movie, and you know, as much as you also were literally entertained. I must say that even I, in the age of COVID, have been able to watch things at home in a way that I've found more comfortable doing, you know, and as a filmmaker, like I've tried so hard my professional life and before that, just as a movie lover, to always see stuff in the theaters. And I know it's hard. It's hard. But this is a movie you have to see in theaters. You know, Dune was something that I was not going to see like on HBO Max. And, you know, this is it's literally an epic. It's literally an epic. You know, we have these like these Icelandic landscapes and these battle sequences, and you need to be transported. You need to be transported to the 10th century. You need to be transported to the Viking Age. And it's like not only for the visuals, but the sound, you know, to really be in a movie theater and experience the waves crashing against the boat and the storm at sea. And, you know, without that, you cannot fully experience what this movie is.
Hey guys, it's Lisa with a cool movie extra fact now. Rick Baker is one of the most well-known makeup artists in the film industry. His work has been used in such films as Star Wars, King Kong, The Exorcist, Videodrome, Men in Black, The Ring, and How the Grinch Stole Christmas. But it was his work on An American Werewolf in London which caused the Academy Awards to create a whole new category for makeup effects, just so Baker could get his golden statue for his efforts. As of 2018, Baker has won that award 7 times. Do you like my shirt? You can get one for yourself in the shop section under the video.